start off by telling you the other day I was over at a friend's house, and she introduced me to a woman who heard about SpeakEasy, and she said, I want to come to your community and have my grandchild blessed at your community, a baptism. Can you do a baptism? And I was like, well, I can do a baby blessing, but I can't really do a baptism because that would infer that there was some sort of sin, and I don't really believe in sin, and her eyes got a little wide. I was like, okay, you are crazy. And I said, but you know, what we do here is we do a blessing to acknowledge the child's spiritual being, to welcome them into the community. It's a beautiful celebration of the truth of all of our being, and it helps us to remember our own innocence. And she said, oh, I like that. She said, well, what about godparents? And I said, yeah, we love godparents. We're all for godparents. And I said one woman came and had her baby blessed here, and instead of godparents, she had guide parents, where these individuals she picked to help guide the child along in his spiritual well-being and in all areas of his life. She was like, oh, I really like that. I said, I really like it too. I said, but I also really like godparents. And I told her the story about when I was little, and I was like 5 or 6, and I have like 5 older sisters, and we were sitting around the house one day, and they were comparing godparents. And they were like, oh, you got Aunt Carol, and you got Uncle Joe, and you you got, and who's the best godparents? And I had never heard of this concept before. Again, I was like 4 or 5 or 6, and I was like, wait, what? Like, we have godparents? Like, what is this about, And I'm like, I have extra parents? Like, I have a godmother and a godfather? And they were like, yeah. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic news. Because the only thing that I knew about godmothers was the fairy godmother from Cinderella. And I was like, she's coming, and she's going to wave her wand. I'm going to get the hell out of this shitstorm, and I'm going to the ball. So whenever Aunt Judy came over, I would just like wait, like a cat visits the queen, like, when's it going to happen, Aunt Judy? When are we going? I want the glass slippers, I want the whole thing, So that never happened. But I liked the idea that it was a godparent and that God was put first. Even as a child, I thought, well, that's so wonderful that God, that you and I are not just connected through blood or through our legacy or through our heritage, but you and you are acknowledging that we are connected by God. And I loved that. And if I never knew otherwise, if we never were told otherwise, that we were not divinely connected with each other by the authority of God, then we would consistently live in this state of grace. I remember when my young son came to me and he had one of those awarenesses, those revelations that we have before we're too old to question it. And he said, Mom, if my cousin Marky, his dad has grandparents and grandparents and grandparents, he said, somewhere back, way back, like, we're all related to each other. And I was like, yeah, we are. We are all related to each other. And so it's good for us to remember. When we use the word remember, you can imagine this church with all of its members in it, that we're all one body of God, and that we all need each other. So that's what this section of Course in Miracles is about. It's about atonement as defense. And in this section, it says defense is not something we ever need with God. Look, we don't need to defend against God. The only time that we need this atonement as a defense is when we use it towards fear. And it says that the principle is always love. In A Course in Miracles, the principle is always love. And that atonement is the extension, the action of that love. Sometimes people in New Thought communities will look at the word atonement, and it seems like a word that we don't use in our normal vernacular. So we like to break it down and say, at one-ment. I am at one with all that is. I am recognizing my oneness with you. I am recognizing my oneness with you. But, in A Course in Miracles, it does use that idea, but it's literally using atonement as the bridge back to our remembering who we are. So it's very related to forgiveness as well. In this idea of our oneness with each other, we get to remember our holy nature. Well, we don't always go around remembering our holy nature. For the most part, we're all walking around remembering and aligning and attuning to the humanness of our being. And so we say, I'm broken, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, and all of this is socially acceptable. And we've made the broken to be normal. We've normalized the brokenness of our being, and we stigmatize the holiness of our being. So to say I'm holy, people will go, who are you? Like, what are you talking about? You're not going to co-sign that we're broken, we're bad, we're limited. You know, so it really is a call to a mighty adventure with God, to show up physically and to speak spiritually and to allow ourselves to be impeccable channels for that truth without exception. So this is what this section is talking about. It's talking about really defending the idea that God is good at all times, in all areas, with all people, no matter what. As a spiritual practitioner, they taught us early on this usage of the denial prayer. And I was always sort of timid around the denial prayer, but the denial prayer was simply denying anything that was not God. You know, I deny the fact that there's sickness in your being. That's just not the truth about God. And so it cannot be the truth about you. Nothing leaves its source. You came from God. You were created as God created you. You can't get dis-ease in that. That's not authored by God. So we can drop that. You can't be stagnant, you can't be slow, you can't be anything but brilliant, because that's how God defined you. You are good, beautiful, and holy as is. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have our classrooms, and these classrooms are meant to carve us out to be even more useful tools for God, even more useful ways of remembering each other. Because in this carving out, it's like, you know, we want to come and just be little boxes lined up for God and have this illusion of perfection. But really what it looks like is puzzle pieces, these awkward, you know, jagged pieces. And then we go, why am I so awkward and jagged? And all of a sudden we click in to the other awkward, jagged pieces, and we're like, oh, I fit. Because you're awkward and jagged too. But together, we make up the perfect puzzle of God. This is what the Mosaic of God looks like. It's mysterious. If we all thought that we were little boxes lining up for God, you know, it'd be boring. But God didn't create you as little boxes. God created you as works of art that have interesting aspects, jagged places and rugged ways that are not to be hid, but to be celebrated so that you can make the connection with your brothers who are seeking to connect with you through this illusion of separation, you know, through this illusion of sickness. And the only way we can heal that illusion of sickness is by bringing it right out and saying, this is who I am, these are the classrooms I've been through. You know, I've had cancer, I've had divorce, I've had drug addiction, I'm not ashamed of it. My friend was saying to me the other day, like, aren't you, like, ashamed? I was like, no, that's not my shame. You can carry shame for that. That someone else can feel shameful around that, but I'm not going to be ashamed of it. Why would I be ashamed of it? Thank you. Can I have a good day? So shame doesn't serve God. So we can deny the power of fear. The power of fear is just a shadow that leaves no mark on anything that's good and beautiful and holy. When Jesus said, forgive them, they know not what they do, that's what he was talking about. He wasn't saying, you know, forgive them for creating wars. Forgive them for killing each other. Forgive them for, you know, denying each other's brilliance. He was saying, forgive them because they're asleep. They're in a dream where they think that they're doing these things, and they think that this dream can have a mark on you, my God. They think that they can define you through their reckless dreams and their nightmares. And that is the interpretation that most people give to God. And God has gotten some horrible PR. You know, and she's like, why? You know, I'm the good guy here. And you know, I say that a lot of Sundays, but we can never hear it enough. There's nothing that you can do that can leave a mark on God. There's nothing that you can do or anyone can do to you that can prevent you from knowing your holiness and your wellness and your oneness. So fear comes from giving something or some person power over God. That's where fear comes from. Fear comes when we say, this is too big for God to handle. And if we've done that, then we need to fire that God and get a bigger God. Because that's not the truth of who God is. That's heresy. That's having an incapable God. And that's just not who God is. And in that, we begin to define ourselves by these sins and these separations. And we begin to define God because we create God in our own image. Right? So God is just, for each of us, every single relationship we have is a reflection reflection of that relationship that we have with God. If you're having broken issues with other people, it always stems from the imperfect definitions we've placed on God. If we really knew the truth of God and we were allowing God to really represent in our bodies and in our beings, every single relationship that we would have would be holy. But the idea of this lesson here is that it's impeccable. That this story is impeccable. That there's no, well, except for this Maureen. And there's no, well, except for that Maureen. Like there's no, what about 9/11? And it's no, what about Hitler? Because of course the ego wants to drag those scripts into this scenario. And God's like, you can't even handle who's under your nose. You're going to talk to me about 9/11? You're going to talk to me about, about Hitler? Like first, why don't you just stop being a terrorist in your own mind? That's your jurisdiction. If you can stop being a terrorist in your own mind, then we'll figure out the rest of it. But I didn't give you authority to try and save the world. I gave you authority to save your mind. And if you save your mind, and if you heal your mind, you will see a holy world. If you see a fractured world, you have a fractured mind, where there's still a belief in separation and sin. Now this isn't said to make us feel bad, but only to give us the information that we need so that we can start to move in a more holy direction with ourselves and be more purposeful. And in this, it's peace, presence, and purpose. So when we start to move into those 3 Ps, if we say, I don't want to have the fractured version anymore, I want to have atonement, I want to have peace with all that is. If I decide I really want to have peace with all that is, suddenly I'm able to be present with all that is. And when I get to be present with all that is, suddenly I get to see the magnificence of God's fingerprints on every single moment, on every breath, on every face, in every corner, in every place. I get to see that God has created this as good and beautiful and holy, not just me, but everything. And if I get to see that, then I'm aligned with my true purpose in God. And my true purpose has nothing to do with fixing the world. And my true purpose has to do with loving the world. And I get to love the world first by being present with the world. When we say, be still and know God, the precursor to that is be still. Still all of that mad ramble. Still all that crucifixion. Still all of that judgment. God doesn't need it. Never gave you the authority for it. God simply said, go and love. And we're like, yeah, well, I got some other plans. That's too easy, God. Don't you know? I'm a really good judge. Got myself a gavel, I see lots of judging places. I could be a man on a mission here. If you could give me another role. And God's like, no, you just need to love. So it's so simple that even a child could do it, and that's why Jesus says, be like little children. This is our primary purpose, to be God in this moment. And God is synonymous with love, with unconditional and holy love. And we're not asked in this scenario to give anything up. No, God is not saying to give anything up. Sometimes on the call Miracles Live 365, I hear people say you sound like, and then I hear myself, sound like a zealot. But yeah, I have great zeal for God. Zeal means life. Life and love are synonymous. Life and love and light are synonymous. So yeah, that's what it would sound like. You would sound like an insane person in a sane world, or a sane person in a crazy world, But that's okay, because you're preordained for this moment. You're not hearing this message by mistake. This is actually a call for you to show up and embody it in all places in your life. And apparently, we're all ready to demonstrate that. And apparently, right now, the world needs it. God has been used to divide and to subtract, and God has no investment in that kind of math. God has only ever desired to add and multiply. She is about extension. And still, we give the illusion to our brothers and to under the temple, under the ashram, under the synagogue, we have said that our God is the only God, and that your God is no good, and that our God is better than your God. We have allowed this to go on. Instead of saying there is one God, it's love. It's the religion of love. And you are my teacher, and you are my brother, and I want to remember that. And God is about addition, and there's more God, and more God, and more God than we could ever even dream to fathom. And there's no scarcity in God, and we don't have to be special when we're all needed. If any one of of us was missing from the great puzzle of God, it would be imperfect. And so we need all of our awkward ways and jagged ways so that we can come together and create this most magnificent mystery of God. It's the only way we're going to see the face of God, is when we invite every piece of the puzzle to have its rightful place in the story of God. So back to the idea of the Godfather and the Godmother. We're not asked to sacrifice these titles. Some of us cling to, I am mother, I am father, I am lawyer, I am doctor, I am. We're only asked to prioritize. I am Godmother, I am Godfather, I am Godchild, I am God doctor, I am God lawyer, I am God healer, I am God teacher. We're only asked to put God first, to remember God first. And if we don't feel adequately confident to say that, to at least know it, and to begin to step into the great waters of God, to begin to allow ourselves to be baptized in that truth at the pace of peace. And God will be patient with us. God will be so much more patient than I am with myself. In my message, sometimes I hear a smattering of sarcasm. Like, when are we going to do this? You know? Like I said to my Aunt Judy, when are we going to the ball? When is that happening? Because I want to go there. And so I feel that there's a pressure in me that's seeking to lean into it, and I want everyone to go. I want everyone to be there. And so there's this impatience. But let me be firm and clear that God is not impatient with us. That God waits and waits and waits for our return. It's so gentle and so generous. So can we be that for each other? Can we be gentle? Can we be generous with ourselves, with our own soul's journey? And at the same time, could we say, today, perhaps today is the day that I fully recognize myself as a beacon of God's love? And what would that require? What would I need to do to jump the fence, to eliminate the illusion, so that I can fully shine like we were designed to do? Although the brokenness has been normalized and the light has been stigmatized, the use of this section of A Course in Miracles is about denying that, and to defend God's truth. Can we defend God's truth today? By saying that God is good, and that God is generous, and God is gentle, and God is peaceful, and God is for us. And as God is for us, nothing is against us. Can we at least begin to contemplate that a little bit today? Because if we do, we will see miracles. And that's what we're here for. And that's the word. Yes, huh?